Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Paramahansa Parikacharya Ashtoto the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parikacharya Ashtoto the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 21st day of February 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-yoga Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 12, text 15, at the bottom of page 523. Got it, Sureswar? Okay. Yasman nodvijate loko lokan nodvijate shayah harshamarsha bayodvegar mukto yah sachame priyaha yasman nodvijate loko lokan nodvijate chayah harsham harshabayodvegar mukto yas sachame priyaha yasman nodvijate loko lokan nodvijate chayah harsham harshabayodvegar mukto yak sachame priyaha yasman nodvijate loko lokan nodvijate chayah harsham harshabayodvegar mukto yak sachame priyaha. Ross. Yasman nodvijate loko lokan nodvijate chayah harsham harshabayodvegar mukto yak sachame priyaha. Antonella. Yasman nodvijate loko lokan nodvijate chayah harsham harshabayodvegar mukto yak sachame priyaha. Yasman nodvijate loko lokan nodvijate chayah harsham harshabayodvegar mukto yak sachame priyaha. Yasmat from whom? Yasmat nodvijate loko
lokan nodvijate chayah
lokan nodvijate chayah
harsham harshabayodvegar
harsham harshabayodvegar
mukto yas sachame priyaha.
mukto yas sachame priyaha. Any more Zoomers out there?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yasmat from whom? Na, never. Udvijate are agitated. Lokaha, people. Lokat, from people. Na, never. Udvijate is disturbed. Cha also, ya, anyone who. Harsha, from happiness. Amarsha, distress. Bhaya, fear. Udvegai, and anxiety. Muktaha, freed. Yaha, who. Saha, anyone. Cha also, may, to me. Priyaha, very dear. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, he by whom no one is put into difficulty and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. Purport. A few of a devotee's qualifications are further being described. No one is put into difficulty, anxiety, fearfulness, or dissatisfaction by such a devotee. Since a devotee is kind to everyone, he does not act in such a way as to put others into anxiety. At the same time, if others try to put a devotee into anxiety, he is not disturbed. It is by the grace of the Lord that he is so practiced that he is not disturbed by any outward disturbance. Actually, because a devotee is always engrossed in Krishna consciousness and engaged in devotional service, such material circumstances cannot move him. Generally, a materialistic person becomes very happy when there is something for his sense gratification and his body. But when he sees that others have something for their sense gratification and he hasn't, he is sorry and envious. When he is expecting some retaliation from an enemy, he is in a state of fear. And when he cannot successfully execute something, he becomes dejected. A devotee who is always transcendental to all these disturbances is very dear to Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, Krishna says earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, the material energy is always mutable. It's always changing. And indeed, when we talk about Bhava Sagara, the ocean of birth and death, that word Bhava actually means change. The material world is constantly changing. This is the nature of matter. It's coming, it has what we call Shadvikar, 6 changes, 6 transformations. Whether it's our own body or this whole earth or something within it, such as a building, it comes into being. Now, especially for organisms, then these especially pertain. But say a human being, we come into being at a certain time. We have a birth date. We grow, right? We maintain for a while. We produce byproducts, dwindle, die, disappear. This is going on. Now, change means that if you're in a situation that's tolerable, nice, okay, everything's fine, how long can it last? Right? In other words, things will change. It's like I've been here since '89. What's that? 34 years now. It'll be 34 years at the end of July. So when I first came here, I came from Miami, which was like, you know, a destination a lot of people go to. But the fact is, Miami can be very hot and humid in the summer, and there's always the hurricane dangers and things like that. That was not ideal. So when I arrived here, it was the end of July, and then after a few weeks, you know, it became like 72 degrees, and every day was 72 degrees and sunny, and there was the ocean. So I said, oh, I made it, you know. I don't want to leave here. And a lot of people, they aspire to live here, and it's a very popular place to live. But let's face it, you know, the climate has changed. We never had winters like this. I mean, it got cold, but not every day, cold, 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 you know. And so it's not horrible, but it's not ideal like it was before. So this can be agitating. Mostly, you know, it's some financial problem, it's some disease, it's some relational problem, your own, you know, the threefold miseries, your own body and mind, just as age comes on, things don't work as well as they used to, or not at all, or whatever. This is the nature of the material world. Constant change. And so the materialist can never have these qualities. Yasman no jidate loka. This is another little editing pastime. That word by there, he by whom, was for a long time for. He for whom no one is put into difficulty. I said, is that really what is meant here? It's put into difficulty for someone else. I mean, that's, isn't it? So I made it by a long time ago. That was one of the first changes I made. That's what it's meant. So he by whom no one is put into difficulty. Or he who puts no one else into difficulty. So this itself is a characteristic of the sadhus. You know, tatikshava karunika suridak sarvadehina. It's not just they're not putting others into difficulty, but they're finding ways to get them out of difficulty. Helpful, merciful. The quality of a devotee. Why is that? Because when you become a little bit awake in Krishna consciousness, you understand your relationship or your oneness with every other living being. We're spirit souls, they're spirit souls. They're wearing a different coat than I am in the form of the body. But basically we're the same. And especially if you've connected even to some degree to Krishna, to the source of all happiness and peace and equanimity, then naturally you feel, well, let me help this person. Let me help, or even if it's a subhuman being, you try to give them something. Certainly don't hurt them. Go out of your way. I like to tell this story. It's long life. I was 12, 13, and I had my friend, and it was a summer night in Long Island, and there were all there were a lot of little bugs and things all over, and we found this spider web. And in the spider web, we noticed that there was a moth that had been caught and was wrapped up. I don't know. I think it was still alive. And that was his refrigerator. He was holding it for later. So he still had his trap. So let's see what happens. We'll catch a moth. So we went around. We caught these moths. We threw it in, and we watched the spider do its thing. I got a lot of karma for that. And a devotee would never do something like that. With that devotional consciousness. Well, this poor moth, they're living entities, they're related to Krishna. Why should I increase their suffering and pain? Let me rather free a moth. So this is just, the cruelty of young boys sometimes, searching out anthills to smash, whatever. And worse. So, but the mentality of a devotee is, vidya vinaya sampane brahmana gibihastati is the verse in the 5th chapter. The devotee sees equally, in the sense, of course he doesn't see externally equally, but he sees that there's a tremendous equality between the learned Brahman, vidya vinaya sampane, learned and humble Brahman, vidya vinaya sampane, brahmani gabihastani, the cow, the elephant, the dog eater. What's the thing that draws them all together? They're all spirit souls. They're part and parcel of Krishna, and so he deals with them without any harm, and if possible, to do good to them, to bring them a step closer to Krishna. That's how a devotee sees everyone. So that no one is put into difficulty, and who is not disturbed by anyone. Now you can have that equanimity yourself if you're not in an exploitative mood, if you're not in an enjoying mood, but you're in a transcendental mood where you're simply living and you're seeing Krishna everywhere. You're seeing God's hand in everything, and you don't feel separate. Now the ideal of this, inconceivably, was Prahlad Maharaj, who was tormented by his father, but he kept his peace. And the fact that he kept his peace, he wasn't crying out in pain and agony when he was being tortured and they tried to kill him, that freaked his father out. You may remember, at last, after they couldn't shake his equanimity after all of that. The Hiranyakashipu said, where did you get your power from? Because this is tremendous power. And then he gave the answer that was guaranteed, he wasn't trying, but guaranteed to disturb his father the most. The same place you do, Father, from Krishna, from God. You say there's some kind of God. Where is he? Is he in this pillar? Bam! The rest of the story. So I was just listening to this. I'm listening to Prabhupada's lectures on Prahlad's prayers, which are a wonderful source of enlightenment and knowledge, by the way. It's chapter 9, 7th canto. And it's true that he was joyful to see his father killed, because it was such a beneficial thing for all the worlds, and it's in the category. Prabhupada tells the story, and I think in the verses that are describing there, the Hiranyakashipu is compared to a poisonous snake or something like that, And Prabhupada tells the story how. Back shortly after he joined the Gaudiya Math, and I think he was initiated, and somehow there was a poisonous snake in the ashram or something, and Bhaktisiddhanta was there, and he said, "Kill it right away," and they did, And Prabhupada was a little put off. So here's the sadhu saying to kill this living entity. Why is that, And then he came across a verse there where Prahlad is saying scorpions and snakes and other intrinsically poisonous beings, the sadhus are joyful when they put, that because by nature, for no good reason, they will attack. And they're dangerous that way. And so there's a category of beings that is best to move them on to the next body. But he wasn't happy because his father was killed. He was happy because his father was liberated from that demonic body and went on. We know after 3 births he's going back to Godhead, right back to Vaikuntha. So there's a whole secret to that also. But basically, this is the qualities of the sadhu: titikshava, karunika, surita, very tolerant and merciful at the same time. Imagine how difficult that combination is. You can be tolerant where you can, stand things, but you're not going to be merciful at the same time. In other words, you simply have a stoic personality, which is not necessarily transcendental. But to be tolerant and also do good for others. This is the quality of the saint. Equipoise in happiness and distress. So that's possible when you don't want anything, when you don't want to enjoy this material world. And rather you see it all as Krishna's will behind everything. The same famous verse, Tatte nukampam samikshamano bundana evatnukatam vipakam. That you see, Tatte nukampam, you're seeing practically everything as Krishna's mercy. That whether it's something good that happens to you or something that is so-called bad, so this is all Krishna's mercy. It's all part of His plan to purify me and to encourage me in devotional service. And you continue offering obeisance and serving rid bhag vabhubi vidadhanama. With your heart, with your words, with your body, with your senses, you continue serving the Lord with undaunted enthusiasm, even if you have some reverses in your material life. And what's the value of this? You're guaranteed to go back to Godhead. What does it say? Ridvag vabhubi vidadhan namaste. Jiveta, one who lives this way, jiveta yo mukti padesa dayabhak. One inherits, this is where dayabhak is used, you become guaranteed to go back to Godhead. Mukti padei. There's a whole pastime behind this. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he couldn't stand the word bhakti padei. He crossed it out in the Bhagavatam and made it bhakti padei. Lord Chaitanya saw that and he laughed. He said, you can't change the words of the Bhagavatam. Mukti padei means you're liberated at the lotus feet of Krishna. It's bhakti, So you can see how this is possible when one is really fixed in Krishna consciousness. And we saw it with Srila Prabhupada. And we read about it in previous acharyas, such as his spiritual master, Bhaktivinoda, and going way back, that they were so tolerant and maintaining their efforts to do good to others, even when shot with so many great reverses. There's a story, this comes to mind, about I think it was Ramanujacharya, and Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya, a lot of their pastimes, were fighting with the Mayavadis, and also with Shaivites. They were also at that time warring with the Vaishnavas, and so there was this attack, and they were actually out to kill Ramanujacharya, they weren't going to kill him; they were going to blind him. So one of his disciples, Koresh, he dressed up as Ramanujacharya. They didn't know what he looked like. He dressed up as Ramanujacharya. And when they came, he said, yes, I'm Ramanujacharya. And they blinded him, actually. And he remained blind for some time. And then, believe it or not, at a certain point, Ramanujacharya directed Koresh to go into a certain temple and beg the deity to return these valuable jewels that had been lost, that were his eyes, So he understood that. He went in there, and somehow it didn't work the first time because he thought it was a selfish thing. But then Ramanuja convinced him that no, this is something that you could use for service to me. So this is these are my treasures also, and so he got his sight back from the deity there of Vishnu. So it's quite a pastime. I have a book on Ramanuja's pastimes. It's wonderful. So can you imagine being that detached that you're willing to, give your life for the Guru? And then to have that disability and not be so disturbed about it. Oh, if I hadn't done that, No, he was still equipoised and chanting the holy name. So this is ideal, and you can see how endearing this would be to Krishna. And that's why he says, after every verse here, Yo mukto yasachame priya. Such a devotee is very dear to me. Okay. So, any questions on this verse or purport? I have a comment. Yes, go ahead. Oh yeah, we have the mic there.
Hare Krishna. So with that pastime of Ramanujacharya, when I heard it, it was that the disciple, he knew he was going into danger, but he was happy to serve his spiritual master. And when they said, we're going to blind you, he said, good, because I don't want to have to look at you anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like I'm being, I'm
going to research that. I don't remember that part. Like an extrapolation. Hold on. Yes.
Hare Krishna. I'm just confused. So it's okay to kill poisonous animals?
Yeah. Well, specifically snakes and scorpions.
I'm a little bit disturbed about this.
Why?
Well, first off, my master, back when I was an Ashtanga yogi, Baba Haridas, I don't know if it's a legend, but it's true. He had a scorpio living in his dreadlocks.
Oh.
The scorpions would go up and they never hurt him.
I see.
For 10 years in a cave, eating a banana a day. And then, I'm a PhD in ecology and animals. I study animals a lot, and especially predators. And everything in nature has a meaning. So I understand maybe if something is threatening you, but if they're not threatening you, I don't see why they would be killed. Yeah,
you don't go out of your way. This snake was in the ashram, and it was dangerous.
There's still ways to get them and put them in a.
Well,
so I'm just disturbed. I think it's not really Krishna, but anyway.
Well, that's your opinion.
I just said my opinion.
Okay. I'll find the verse in Bhagavad Gita. Maybe there's a nice purport there, Prabhupada would explain. All right, going on to text 16. Anapeksha shuchir daksha udasino gata vitaha sarvaramba padityagi yomad bhakta same priyaha. My devotee who is not dependent on the ordinary course of activities, who is pure, expert, without cares, free from all pains, and not striving for some result, is very dear to me. Purport. Money may be offered to a devotee, but he should not struggle to acquire it. If automatically, by the grace of the Supreme, money comes to him, he is not agitated. Naturally, a devotee takes a bath, at least, then the next one is the shuchir. Takes a bath at least twice in a day and rises early in the morning for devotional service. Thus he is naturally clean both inwardly and outwardly. A devotee is always expert because he fully knows the essence of all activities of life, and he is convinced of the authoritative scriptures. Okay, that's expert. Free from care, a devotee never takes the part of a particular party, therefore he is carefree. He is never pained, katabhyata, because he is free from all designations. He knows that his body is a designation, so if there are some bodily pains, he is free. And then sarvaramba parityagi, the pure devotee does not endeavor for anything which is against the principles of devotional service. For example, constructing a big building requires great energy, and a devotee does not take to such business if it does not benefit him by advancing his devotional service. He may construct a temple for the Lord, and for that he may take all kinds of anxiety, but he does not construct a big house for his personal relations. So these are all evidences of the basic principle of Krishna consciousness, is that you're always focused on what is pleasing to the Lord, and you're less and less focused on your own needs and your own comforts. There has to be some of that. Food, shelter, things like that, take care of your health. And you can do it in the mood of, okay, this is an instrument serving Krishna, it should be nicely taken care of. And Prabhupada always told us that. One time I remember A lot of my memories of Prabhupada are through hearing his lectures. So he's giving a lecture in New Vrindavan, and this one, you hear a cough, and finally stops. Why is everyone coughing? Why is everyone sick? And he's looking at the authorities. They're not giving warm clothes. You're not giving proper food, and they're not giving it. You have to take care of the health, because this is an instrument for serving Krishna. So he would do that, and Prabhupada would do that for himself. There's this wonderful movie I mentioned. I'm going to maybe show it one of these days in this class time. The Return of the Empowered Acharya. Did you look at it? Yeah. It's really great. And Prabhupada was returned to India. I always heard, and I guess this was part of the reason, to regain his health. But in this movie, it says he was expecting he would pass away there. That he returned to Vrindavan. He tried, and he did something in America. He tried to fulfill his spiritual master's order, but his health was so weak. He had 3 heart attacks, 2 on the ship and 1 on So, but his health did get better in India, in Vrindavan, naturally the heat and his Ayurvedic medicine, whatever. And then he was getting all of these requests, these letters, moving letters from his disciples, please come back, please come back. You remember that? Please come back. So he comes back, and you can imagine the emotions, these devotees. They had given everything, they surrendered, they're chanting Hare Krishna, experiencing the bliss, and suddenly Prabhupada leaves and everyone's bereft. They don't know what's going to happen. The movement is just in its infancy. Happens. It's all right. Tapasal can send me in. He's got the. So, but then he he makes the decision to go back despite all the dangers to his health, because of the love of his devotees, And then that was in the end of 67. And then for another 10 years, he travels all over the world, and the whole movement grows, and it goes everywhere, builds the Krishna Balaram temple. The whole fight in Bombay took, it's amazing. He was empowered. It's just adds so much to the whole thing to become conscious of that. So that's, Prabhupada is actually, you can see, he's manifested all of these different qualities as a great example, and he gave us the opportunity to also do that. Yo narishyati nadreshti na shochati na kankshati shubhashava parityagi bhaktiman yatsame priyaha. One who neither rejoices nor grieves, who neither laments nor desires, and who renounces both auspicious and inauspicious things, such a devotee is very dear to me. Purport. A devotee is neither happy nor distressed over material gain and loss, nor is he very much anxious to get a son or disciple, nor is he distressed by not getting them. If he loses anything which is very dear to him, he does not lament. Similarly, if he does not get what he desires, he is not distressed. He is transcendental in the face of all kinds of auspicious, inauspicious, and sinful activities. He is prepared to accept all kinds of risks for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Nothing is an impediment in the discharge of his devotional service. Such a devotee is very dear to Krishna. Now it's interesting that when these things are in relation to Krishna, that they're all present. He doesn't rejoice or grieve. Well, just think of Lord Chaitanya's example when he meets Lord Krishna. You go to the Antya Leela, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he's showing great anxiety, being separate from Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani, But then for instance, he's out in the Jagannath Vallabha gardens. These are gardens near the temple, the main temple there. And he's looking, where is Krishna, where is Krishna? And he's in tremendous anxiety. And then he sees Krishna. And, great jubilation and ecstasy, and then the next minute Krishna disappears and the anxiety returns. What does it mean? Yugayatam nameshena chakshusha pravashayatam. Every moment drags on like 1,000,000 years or more. I mean, that's anxiety. That means, where is my beloved? So these material emotions, which are signs of great conditioning and nothing but suffering, when they're spiritualized, It looks like the greatest pain, but actually it's the greatest ecstasy, Mahabhava. Lord Chaitanya is crying, he's showing these symptoms, he's drawing his limbs within his body. Who can conceive of that? You know? And all his devotees are in great anxiety for him, you know? And then, you know, they chant Hare Krishna, and he feels Krishna's presence, and he gets up and dances in the greatest ecstasy, and tears go. This is the highest realization. But materially, none of these things don't happen. And you can see, remember, we're going to read in the 18th chapter, the famous verse, Brahma Bhutta Prasanama Nashochati Nakangshati. Remember that? So that's here also, Nashochati Nakangshati, the same phrases here. So not lamenting for anything material, and not desiring anything material. How could they desire anything material? Think of the Goswamis. They gave up everything material. They had everything. They had a whole boatload of gold. You imagine how much it was worth? Rupa Goswami cashed out, you know. And then what did he do? Okay, let me invest it in. No. You know. He gave half of it away to the Brahmins and Vaishnavas. Quarter of it he gave to his relatives, because they probably said, because they expect something, you know, like that fire, you know. Okay, take a quarter. You know, a few $1 million, you know. And then he kept a quarter of it for emergencies, and he was able to bail out Sanatana Goswami, you know, put to the best use. And then he had nothing. Great. Now he's walking around Vrindavan, a loincloth, not even a home, not even this is my tree. No, a different tree every night. Hardly eating, hardly sleeping, reducing the material things back to practically nothing at all. But they were the richest of all. Gopi bhavada samatabdalahadi kalola magnomoha. Diving and swimming and tasting the highest ecstasy of the gopis' love for Krishna, and all the varieties that we read in the Nectar of Devotion and more. That's real wealth, because it doesn't come to an end. It's not dependent on anything material. It's just dependent on your own consciousness and your own, you know, love for Krishna, which they had in abundance. And then expressing it in all these wonderful ways, so that you know, for posterity, people could read about the greatest lives. So they gave up all this material wealth. What is it? Ashesha Mandalapati Shrenim. Mandalapati means influence, wealth, prestige, everything that people have. Gave it up as tucha but insignificant. This is the ideal. So no rishiti, no dreshti. This is when material things happen that are very good. Don't go overboard, you know, because it'll change. And when things happen that are painful, don't worry, it'll change. It'll come back to the neutral again. This equipoise is so important in the dualities of this world, and not lamenting and not hankering. Shubha Shubha Padatyagi, what is it? Renouncer of both auspicious and inauspicious, materially auspicious and inauspicious, not worrying about it. And then we become very dear to Krishna. All right, going on with the description of those who are very dear to the Lord. Samakshatraucha mitrecha satamana pamanayo shitosha sakudukeshu samaksanga vivarjitaha tulyanandastatir mauni santushto yena kenachit aniketas tiramatir bhaktiman me priyo naraha. One who is equal to friends and enemies. Now, you have no enmity toward others, but others may have enmity toward you. Right? This is the whole idea. Because in English it's a little fuzzy. If you say, I don't have any enemies, it means no one hates you. Not that I don't hate anybody. You see? There's the whole thing of which direction. So, friends and enemies, those who think he's a friend and those who think he's an enemy, you're equal. You don't get into, you know, distinctions like that. One who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who is always free from contaminating association, always silent and satisfied. Silent means silent, not speaking any nonsense or hearing nonsense. Satisfied with anything, who doesn't care for any residence, who is fixed in knowledge, and who is engaged in devotional service, such a person is very dear to me. Purport: a devotee is always free from all bad association. Sometimes one is praised and sometimes one is defamed. That is the nature of human society. But a devotee is always transcendental to artificial fame and infamy. Distress or happiness. He's very patient. He's very patient. He does not speak of anything but the topics about Krishna. Therefore, he is called silent. Silent does not mean that one should not speak. Silent means that one should not speak nonsense. One should speak only of essentials, and the most essential speech for the devotee is to speak for the sake of the Supreme Lord. A devotee is happy in all conditions. Sometimes he may get very palatable foodstuffs, sometimes not, but he is satisfied. Nor does he care for any residential facility. He may sometimes live underneath a tree, and he may sometimes live in a very palatial building. He's attracted to neither. He's called fixed because he is fixed in his determination and knowledge. We may find some repetition in the descriptions of the qualifications of a devotee, but this is just to emphasize the fact that a devotee must acquire all these qualifications. Without good qualifications, one cannot be a pure devotee. Hadava bhaktasa kuto mahadguna. One who is not a devotee has no good qualification. One who wants to be recognized as a devotee should develop the good qualifications. Of course, he does not extraneously endeavor to acquire these qualifications, but engagement in Krishna consciousness and devotional service automatically helps him develop them. So Prabhupada quote this line from a verse he would often quote. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavadgita kinchana sarvarganas samastas tegada harava bhakta sukuto mahadgana manodate nasati davato bahi. That for one who is a servant, this is a verse by Prahlad Maharaj. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavadgita kinchana, who's practicing pure devotee, who's a kinchana, has no sense of proprietorship or anything, develops all these good qualities that we're reading about. They come naturally. Now, this is an interesting point, because what do we need to read about them for if they come naturally? But the thing is, come naturally means you know about them, and you practice devotional service, and when it's possible to pray for them, to cultivate them, and not, in the context of your devotional service. Let's put it this way. And so they develop that, you know what they are, and then you recognize them and you say, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. Because you have a choice to make. You can either talk nonsense or not. So if one of the qualities is that the devotee doesn't talk, he only talks about Krishna. So you'll make an effort to only do that. And at a certain point it'll become natural. You won't want to talk about anything else. So this is kind of a little, it works both ways. But yasyasti bhakti, so the natural qualities develop in a devotee. But how can there be any good qualities in someone who's not a devotee? And this phrase is very important. Because why aren't these qualities there? Manoratena asati davato bahi, which means that the mind is the chariot of the mind. Manorata, isn't it like the train of thought? It's not going to give a train of thought. Like the kid is daydreaming, and he's looking out the window, and the teacher says, bring your mind back into the subject that we're doing. You're letting your mind go, and it's taking you. And the devotees realize that you have to keep the mind under control. So the materialist naturally, just think of the cell phone. How so much is coming through the cell phone to take your mind here, you press this button, suddenly you're on this thing. I notice we were going to have a meeting this morning, but it didn't happen. But I'm sitting there all set to have the meeting, the Zoom meeting. So I explored some of the buttons they said, and one of them is enhance your appearance, right? Isn't it? So what the heck is that? And there's a little bar you can move. So I moved it up to the top and said, "Oh, what happened to all my wrinkles?" It's but there's a danger in that, isn't it? Where they have this app where you can make yourself look ideal, right? Tuck in the tummy and everything. But then you have to try to live up to that image when they meet you in person. Say, "What happened to you?" Right? So it's a tremendous point of anxiety. To be so concerned with your physical appearance. This is exactly opposite to Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada explained, this is on another tape I heard, when you're satisfied dressing the deities nicely, then you don't worry about so much dressing yourself nicely. Like Janardhan Prabhu. You know, maybe in his other, before he knew anything, he was a clothes horse, you know, what they used to call. But, you know, he's got a church shirt on. He basically got the the uniform. And, you know, but when he dressed in the deity, oh, is that in the right place? You know, and then if you come back and then you see, oh, it looks so beautiful. So this is exactly the Krishna conscious point, is that you're taking pleasure in Krishna being beautiful, Krishna being attractive, and making him happy, and so forth. And you forget about your own happiness, but that you find yourself very happy and peaceful. That's the key in Krishna consciousness. You want to be really blissful? Forget about your bliss. Just worry about Krishna's happiness and how to serve the devotees, and how can a spiritual master be happy, and how can I, you know, help this person become Krishna conscious. And then you find yourself naturally peaceful and very happy, because Krishna is happy inside, and he's the reservoir of pleasure. Anandamaya Bhyasat. This phrase, I think I brought your attention to this. In the second canto, it's in the purport to that famous verse, Akama Sarvakamo Va Moksha Kamo Daradi. Tivrena bhakti-yoga jeta purusham param. It's a very, very wonderful passage. There's a whole list of demigods and demigoddesses you can worship. If you want this, you want that, you want this, you want that. You want a strong, beautiful body? Worship Indra. You know, you want a good wife? Worship Uma. You want a health? Worship Surya. It goes on, like there's a whole laundry list. But then at the end, it says, Akama Savakam. Whether you're free of all desires, or you want everything, or you want liberation, if you're the intelligent person, Udaradi, practices intense devotional service to Krishna. Tivrena bhakti-yoga yajeta purusham param. And then in the purport to that, Prabhupada quotes this phrase. It's not a verse because it's prose, but it's from Jiva Goswami, one of his Sandarbhas. I haven't located which one it is. And let's see if I can remember it. I memorized this 50 years ago. It says, Padama Purusha, Bhajaniya Padama Purusha, Sukha Matra Swasukatvam. The whole essence of the principle of bhakti is right there. So it starts as Bhajaniya, the worshipable Padama Purusha, Supreme Lord. Padama Purusha. Very easy to understand. Bhajaniya, worship, Bhajaniya, Padama Purusha, Sukha Matra. Only the happiness of that Supreme Person. That's it, but it's not finished yet. Sukha Matra Swasukatvam. Taking one's own happiness only in the happiness or pleasure of the Supreme Personality of God, the Supreme Person. That's the principle of pure devotion. And here's the clincher, is that logically, even without actually being able to experience that happiness yet, but logically, the ability or the capacity of the Supreme Person to enjoy is infinite. That's why he's God, right? If you were God, what would you do? I'd be enjoying all the time. But you superimpose your idea of, yeah, I'd be the boss, everyone would serve me. But no, that's what that doesn't give Krishna pleasure. He doesn't enjoy lording it over people. He enjoys in Vrindavan, you know, engaging in the rasa, in bhakti. Bhakti is, look it up, it's a reciprocal thing. It's sharing, it's loving exchange. That's what bhakti is. So Krishna takes pleasure in that. He takes pleasure not only in being served by his mother, but in giving her the bliss of serving him. That's what really gives him pleasure, you see? So therefore he hides his majesty, so it's not just out of fear and, you know, awe and reverence. That's secondary. What's really pleasurable is, you know, playing with his friends at an equal level, and they're playing a trick on him, like he doesn't know that they're going to put a flower in his mouth, you know? That's all. He knows, but he pretends not to know, and then, yeah, what do you do, you know? And they're laughing at him, and he's enjoying that. It's a whole other game, you know? So that they're enjoying giving Krishna pleasure, and he's enjoying giving them pleasure, and this is the ultimate pleasure, because it's all at a spiritual level. It's not selfish. So bhajaniya padama purusha sukha matra swasukatvam. And the funny thing is, I looked up this line recently, and I was reading the paragraph in which it appears, and it said, one of the principles was to seeing Krishna as one's only source of happiness. And I said, is that right? Is that what Prabhupada actually typed? He actually typed this out. And I looked up the original I got, that he typed. And then there's the one that was retyped by his first editor, so he could edit it because it had room between the lines. But he mistyped it. It's not that one gets one's pleasure only from Krishna, but one gets one's pleasure only from pleasing Krishna. That's the whole idea. It's like 180 degrees. So that mood nourishes all of these qualities that we've been saying. If you're getting your pleasure from serving Krishna, and don't forget that's internal. You can be on a desert island, you can be in an opulent temple. But if you're fully Krishna conscious and you're glorifying and you're doing what's needed for serving Krishna, then you'll be happy. And if you're on the top of a mountain somewhere and all you've got is your beads, Hare Krishna, Krishna, you can be just as happy. Because you're connecting within. You see, the wealth of that doesn't depend on your age, it doesn't depend on any paraphernalia, the beads, even if you don't have beads. Have you ever chanted on your fingers if you don't have your beads? Vachitanya is a knotted string. In other words, basically with nothing, you can connect to that ocean of bliss, if you know how. So all these qualities come naturally. All right, let's finish the chapter. We can do it. Yetu dharmarmitamidam yatoktam payupasate shaddadhana matpadama bhaktaste tiva me priya. Bhaktaste tiva me priyaha. I'm sorry. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. Purport. In this chapter, from verse 2 through the end, from Maya Besham Manoyemam, fixing the mind on me, through Yetu Dharmamritamidam, this religion of eternal engagement, the Supreme Lord has explained the processes of transcendental service for approaching Him. Such processes are very dear to the Lord, and He accepts a person engaged in them. The question of who is better, one who is engaged in the path of impersonal Brahman, or one who is engaged in the personal service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was raised by Arjuna, and the Lord replied to him so explicitly that there is no doubt that devotional service to the Personality of Godhead is the best of all processes of spiritual realization. In other words, in this chapter it is decided that through good association one develops attachment for pure devotional service, and thereby accepts a bona fide spiritual master, and from him begins to hear and chant and observe the regulative principles of devotional service with faith, attachment, and devotion, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This path is recommended in this chapter. Therefore, there is no doubt that devotional service is the only absolute path for self-realization, for the attainment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The impersonal conception of the Supreme Absolute Truth, as described in this chapter, is recommended only up to the time one surrenders himself for self-realization. In other words, as long as one does not have the chance to associate with a pure devotee, the impersonal conception may be beneficial. In the impersonal conception of the Absolute Truth, one works without fruit of result, meditates, and cultivates knowledge to understand spirit and matter. This is necessary as long as one is not in the association of a pure devotee. Fortunately, if one develops directly a desire to engage in Krishna consciousness in pure devotional service, he does not need to undergo step-by-step improvements in spiritual realization. Devotional service, as described in the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, is more congenial. One need not bother about materials to keep body and soul together, because by the grace of the Lord, everything is carried out automatically. Thus end the Bhagavatam purpose of the 12th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of devotional service. So that ends the middle 6 chapters. Now there's many interesting things in the final 6 chapters, as we'll discover beginning in chapter 13. But it's wonderful the way it culminates here in pure devotion, devotional service in these middle 6 chapters. So there's much to contemplate in this chapter, and it's quite an adventure to go through this Bhagavad Gita, ever fresh. Okay, it's time for Kirtan. Thank you very much for coming. We'll begin chapter 13 tomorrow. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.